Hi everyone. This video is going to be a book review about a book that I recently borrowed from the library, and the title of the book is Witches and Witchcraft in the 21st Century, and it was written by Katie Boyd. So I used to work at the library about 5 to 6 years, as I mentioned in other videos, and sometimes I like to go to the branches not only to visit my coworkers, but also to see what's happening with the collection. One of my favorite sections is 133, which is mostly occult books. And every branch I worked at, the 133 section was very, very scarce. So I've begun to notice that as I've visited more, there are more books increasing in that section. Usually it might be because of the request of patrons or library goers, or it might be that somebody's made a decision to increase books in that section because witchcraft is gaining more popularity, and the library usually reflects what the demographics of the area desires, what they're borrowing the most, and they try to cater to them. So when I went over to the 133 section, I found this book on the shelf, and I thought it looked pretty interesting. I saw that it was going to be quite a speedy read, so I decided to grab it. Let me tell you a little bit about the author, the publishing company, and then I will get into the book, what I liked about it, and what challenges I had when I read it. So this book was published in 2010 by Schiffer Publishing. I believe they're based in Europe, even though up here it says Pennsylvania. But it came with this bookmark. A little bit about the publishing company. And this is the author. You can't really see her because of the darkness of the photograph. And it says, about the author. Katie Boyd is an internationally known demonologist and occult sciences crimes expert located in New Hampshire. She grew up in a haunted house, which had severe poltergeist activity that tore her family apart, and she now helps those who are dealing with similar issues. Katie is an expert in her fields and has over 21 years studying, training, and experience. She handles all types of cases, from everyday spirit haunting, demonic entities and hauntings, to exorcisms, possessions, and occult crime cases all around the world. Katie has written several articles in the popular Mysteries magazine, as well as books which include Ghost Quest in New Hampshire, Devils and Demonology in the 21st Century, Rhode Island Spooky Ghosts and Creepy Legends, and Haunted Closets, True Tales of the Boogeyman. Yeah, that actual book, that last one, kind of scared me a little bit. But yeah, it's like, here's the friend has a lady walking through the woods. She actually looks like this belly dancer named Sadie. But now, in the first part of the book, chapter 1, The Birth of Witchcraft, she basically talks about those who were persecuted for being witches, those who were accused of being witches. It starts off with a poem, and you'll see this throughout the book. Usually at the beginning of every chapter, there's some type of creative writing piece there, and it's italicized. Me, personally, I could have done without the poetry. I guess I'm just not used to seeing every chapter begin with type of poem in a nonfiction book. But I don't think it was the poem that bothered me, it was the font. I had a challenge throughout this book reading certain fonts, and I will go through that as I go along. She speaks of the witch craze around the world, has photographs of different torture devices they used for people who were accused of being witches. She describes this persecution throughout Europe. So a lot of people, when they think of witchcraft or people being killed for being witches or accused of being witches, they think of the Salem witch trials. But she says, no, this is something that's still going on today. It is something that happened even before the Salem witch trials in different parts of Europe. She really doesn't focus on Africa. I'm sure there's some cases in South America where people were persecuted for being witches. She primarily focuses on Europe and how as time went on and science became more advanced and people started changing their beliefs about witches and witchcraft, the persecution kind of died down. Now there are still witches being persecuted today, but not in the same manner, or at least in this country on average, not in the same manner of being hanged or burned. More like, oh, let me evict you, or let me shut down your business, or let me take your children away from you because of your belief system. There's still people in other countries that will kill you for practicing witchcraft. So it is still happening to this day. But yeah, she mainly focuses on witchcraft during the 10th century, how it began, the church's role in it, how certain groups of people were accused of being witches simply because they were not of the belief system of the society. She talks about the mistranslation of "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live," Exodus 20:18. And that's funny because my mother just sent me a text a couple of weeks ago, and she listens to these different prophets, and the prophets are like, "Your daughter is practicing witchcraft. She's running with witches." And then she texted me. She's like, "No, stay away from those witches. The Lord shall not suffer a witch to live." And I was like, okay. Like, okay, Mom. But she says that this was a mistranslation, which I felt was the case, because there was another mistranslation in the Bible, which is "I am black but comely." But when you go to the actual reading, it says "I am black and comely." So that one word changed the whole structure of the scripture or the verse. Or even "a virtuous woman." In certain translations, that translates as "a mighty woman." So witch in this case could have been poisoner. "Thou shalt not suffer a poisoner to live." That makes perfect sense. You had King James the first, who of course had all of these people trying to kill him all the time. So of course you would be a little bit paranoid if you're thinking everybody's going to poison you. He was also very deep into the occult himself. He had his own little secrets. So he was kind of a scary guy, a very fear-based man. So it does not surprise me that if they change the verse to save his life, it is not surprising. Anyway, so she also has transcripts of people who were accused of being witches, and you can read them for yourself. She has the transcripts of the accused and the transcripts of the accuser. This is another part where I had issues with the font that was used. I know this is probably not her fault. It is probably the publishing company's fault. But I'm just saying this because if I did not have the good vision that I have and understand the font, just looking at it, if I was just a person who didn't have that great a vision or was not familiar with this font, I'd have a difficult time reading certain parts of this book. Also, the page color, I don't know if you can see it based off of your computer screen or my computer screen, but it is not white all the way. It's kind of like a grayish off-white thing. So if I'm having something with color blindness or whatnot, that might be an issue as well. But other than that, I learned a lot in the first chapter, Witch Craze in the 20th Century. She says, so now we are brought up to the 20th century, a time of industrialism and technology, hard science clashing with spiritualism. So as a result of like this 20th century entering, the whole craze, the whole witch craze died down. It wasn't like, I'm going to kill you for being a witch. It'd be like, okay, she's kind of strange. She doesn't have my lifestyle. I'm just going to stay away from her. So just isolate that person. But kill them? No. The next chapter was one that I was particularly fond of because it answered a lot of questions that I had about the differences between Wiccan, pagan, and witch. So pagan is basically, let me see, I'm trying to remember. It's simply, one person translated it as outsider. So I've been hearing this word pagan for a very, very, very long time. Went to an all-Christian school, grew up in a Christian church, but they never explained what pagan was. They were like, no, we don't celebrate pagan holidays. We don't do that because that's pagan. And I'm like, what is pagan? Like, I didn't even know what it was. So as I got older, I just assumed that pagan meant non-Christian. That's my translation of it. Pagan means non-Christian. But according to this book, it says, the majority of neo-pagans believe that paganism is an ancient form of worship. Paleo-paganism is simply used to refer to polytheistic tribal faiths such as Buddhism, Shinto, and Hinduism. These are original, non-Abrahamic faiths brought down through generations seemingly unchanged since the pre-Christian era. So, pagan is merely a broad term for any non-Abrahamic belief system, if you want to have just an easy definition of it. So, for example, I've encountered a lot of Israelites or Hebrew Israelites. And like, no, don't do that. That's pagan. That because the Hebrew Israelites, they have their own holy days. They won't celebrate different holidays like Christmas or man-made holidays. I guess Jehovah's Witnesses do the same thing. Me personally, I'm like, well, if you're celebrating a certain day, then wouldn't that be pagan? Wouldn't that be man-made? Because you actually put a date on it. But whatever. That's just my personal opinion of it. So Wicca. A lot of people think that Wicca just is witches, and some witches do say that Wicca just means witchcraft. But Wicca is a religion. Some people don't believe that it is a religion. Some are like, I don't practice organized religion. It is a spiritual system. It's not a religion. But Wicca is basically a religion. And just because you are Wiccan does not mean that you practice witchcraft. That part surprised me. She said, witchcraft is a practice. Wicca is the religion. And that answered a lot of the questions that I've had for years. Because I remember several years ago, I went on YouTube and I came across a video of a girl that said she was a Christian witch. And I said, how? How are you a Christian witch? I had never heard of that before. And then I came across another video of a woman that was like, I'm a messianic witch. And I was like, what? Like, I'm a Jewish witch. I'm this. I'm like, how is that possible? Because I was thinking of it as witchcraft as just being a religion when it's actually basically a practice. So you can be any religion and practice witchcraft. You can be a Catholic practicing witchcraft. You can be a Jew. You can be a Buddhist practicing witchcraft. It's just very interesting. And she also places a blog post from somebody else in here who gives a wonderful definition of the differences between Wicca and witchcraft. Some parts I'm like, okay. Wicca is a religion and witchcraft is the practice. So an easier example is Christianity is a religion, prayer is a practice. You don't have to be a Christian to pray. You can be a Buddhist to pray. You can be a Catholic. You can be something else and still pray because prayer is the practice. She says, not all witches are Wiccan, nor all Wiccans are witches. The focus of Wicca is on the Lord and Lady, the wheel of the year, and one's spirituality. The focus of witchcraft is on the casting of spells and the use of herbs towards a specific end or goal. I don't believe in the whole use of herbs part because some witches do not use any tools at all. They just use their own mind. They don't believe in having tools. Some don't mess with herbs, some mess with crystals. But it was a good explanation. Then she goes into saying, is witchcraft a religion? On the other hand, witchcraft is derived from the Old English word Witchcraft, which describes the practices and beliefs by the Wicca. So is witchcraft a religion? Yes, I think we can say it is, but we can also say that Wicca is a branch of the witchcraft religion, and that paganism is the umbrella term of any earth-focused or non-Judeo-Christian religion. So this is how it would go. You got pagan, Wicca, witchcraft, or witchcraft, Wicca. Pagan, non-Christian, or non-Abrahamic belief system, witchcraft, which can also serve as a religion, and Wicca. Because under witchcraft, you can have hoodoo, you can have Ifa, you can have, well, Ifa's like a religion. Ifa, there's various things. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting. Next chapter, she goes into our mothers of the craft. Now, our mothers of the craft and our fathers of the craft is something that truly helped me learn about the main players in modern witchcraft. I had come across their names in other occult books that I read, but I didn't know much about them. And usually the books would make the assumption that I already knew these people. We're like, well, you know, when Gardner did such and such a thing. And I'm like, what, he did? I didn't know that. Like, or why did this person have a falling out with this person? What was their story? How did they get into this? Because now witchcraft is basically very trendy right now. Everybody's like, I'm a witch, I'm a witch, I'm a witch. I have my crystals, I have my crystals. Some people are, they say hereditary witches. Their families just were in a lineage. Like their grandma practiced, their mama practiced, their daddy practiced, their great-great-great-great-grandfather practiced, and it's part of hereditary. But just imagine during the time when you could be killed for it, but you still can be killed for it, but killed on a massive scale in your society, and you're still practicing. Shoot, that's kind of intense. You are a true ride or die, okay? So she mentions Sybil Leek, the first to bring witchcraft to the United States, member of one of the 4 original New Forest covens. And Sybil Leek has her bird. She talks about Doreen Valiente, if I'm pronouncing her name right. And I only have one of her books that I bought about 2 years ago. It's like an encyclopedia of witchcraft. It's very, very good. She also mentions, who else? Lori Cabot, who for some reason I had heard her name, but I honestly didn't know who she was. Then in the Fathers of the Craft, she talks about Gardner, Alex Sanders, which the Alexandrian Wicca, Gavin Frost, who ironically, they started the first church and school of Wicca in St. Louis. And I'm in St. Louis. I'm like, what? Why didn't I know this stuff? So apparently, I don't think it's here anymore. They moved it somewhere else, but I was like, huh, it's really interesting the things that began in this town. But yeah, this was a chapter that I really liked, but I had only one issue with it, like, and I'm not saying this to be like, oh, she didn't mention any Black people, but I'm just saying. Because every book that I read about something, I usually try to find the presence of people of African descent in there. And I would have at least thought she would mention Marie Laveau, the voodoo queen of New Orleans. Like, she played a significant role in her time period and her society, and she still has an effect on people today. And she was not brought into the book, even though she basically ran the whole town of New Orleans. So I was expecting to see her as part of Mothers of the Craft, but I didn't see any of that. I was like, okay, maybe, I don't know. Maybe she wanted to just focus on, I don't know, maybe she didn't mention hoodoo that much, or voodoo a lot in here. So maybe her primary focus is just Wicca, and that is why the other people were mentioned, even though she studies demonology and various things. Anyway, the next part is 21st century witchcraft. She talks about being a solitary coven, all the different various things. In the back, she has spells and rituals. chants, modern day rituals. I could have done without the back. I guess she just added it to add something, but I feel like the book was officially done at the part of our mothers and fathers of the craft, because I could get the spells and everything from other books. I just wanted to learn more about the history of it, but I'm glad she added it in there. She also added a lot of information, like all of the books by these people in the bibliography. I was like, oh my God, we're gonna have to do some reading, okay? Books of modern witchcraft, origins of witchcraft, articles. She also has where you can find some covens, organizations. Oh, that's another thing I forgot to mention in this review. The people, the mothers and fathers of the craft, set in place different things, or started the cycle to get protection rights for people who practice witchcraft, because a lot of them were persecuted. A lot of them had friends that they knew getting evicted from their space, all because of their belief system. Others helped inmates in prison have protection over their beliefs and showed the prison system how to operate with, let's say, if a prisoner was a Wicca or Wiccan, or if the prisoner had some belief system that was a part of witchcraft, how to operate with these people in prison. So they helped to pass a lot of laws that gave rights to witches, a lot of laws that recognize Wicca as a religion and whatever belief system the witches had at the time to be recognized as a belief system and respected. So the mothers and fathers of the craft truly paved the way for the witches that exist now today. They helped a lot of people come out of, I guess, the broom closet, the metaphorical broom closet. You have people still practicing in secret because they're afraid they're going to lose their job. They're afraid that their family, their friends will persecute them, various things. There's still people, like I said, there's still people today getting killed for practicing witchcraft. But overall, I liked this book. The only issues that I had were, with the font, the lack of mention of people of color who played significant roles in witchcraft. And I'm just saying this because I have read other witchcraft books, and there definitely were people of color who did. Like, they didn't even mention the Dogon. Like, maybe she doesn't know about it. I don't know. But I mean, the Dogon, they had their whole cosmology and everything. I mean, I would include them as witches. But that's just my personal opinion. But I do recommend this book. I think she did a good job. She did a lot of research. It was full of passion. I learned an incredible amount about the people that helped to pave the way for modern witches and other witch persecutions around Europe. So thank you, Katie Boyd. I'll be sure to read more of your books. I am particularly gravitating towards the ones that she wrote about demons, because I don't know that much about them. And happy reading to everyone. Look forward to the next book review. Bye-bye.